Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to BMS 300 Principles of Physiology. If you guys aren't here to learn about the human body, now's a good time to sneak out. But if you are, welcome. And we have a lot of open seats up in front. I'm Dr. Michael, and I'd like to start with an overview of what we'll be discussing today. So, all of my slides for the rest of the semester and today's lecture are actually up on Canvas. So if you go to the homepage and you click on lectures, and then you'll see PDF files which you can download. All right. So, and it's helpful to follow along with the PDF document. So we're going to begin with the introduction of the instructors. So I'll be the main instructor for this course, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll tell you about the other instructors as well. Then I'll spend some time giving you the course overview, where we'll have a bird's eye view of what we'll be discussing. And the reason I'd like to start the semester with this is as we get through the nitty-gritty further along in the semester, I hope you don't lose sight of the trees because of the forest. So we'll always be coming back to the slides I cover today, so that you know where we are in the grand scheme of things. And then we'll spend some time talking about the method of delivery of the material, which would be through lectures, through recitations, and also through tutorials, which you can attend on your own time. And then we'll talk about the exam format, and then I'll just point out some things from the syllabus, such as how points are distributed, how to access the ebook, the role of the optional textbook, and I also want to spend some time about talking about these RPAs, repeated practice activities, which have been shown to increase student performance. So I want to begin with a little bit about myself. So I'm Dr. Michael, and I got my PhD at Washington State University. The specialization was in cardiac physiology, and I came to the US almost 14 years ago. And when I came here as an international student, are there any international students in the class here? Oh, okay, great. 1, 2, fantastic. Welcome. So when I came as an international student, and I told people my name was John, the first question which they would ask in response is that your real name, or is that a name you picked up just to make our life easier, right? Something to that effect. And so that gave me a chance to tell them a little bit about my Indian heritage, right? So I tell them it is my real name, my first name John, middle name Jeshran, last name Michael. All of that is from an English Bible, because Christians in India would give names from an English Bible. And the reason why it is an English Bible is because the British ruled us for almost 200 years, right? So I get to tell them that English is actually our official language, and believe it or not, I learned to speak English back in India, and I think among the few languages I speak, I'm most comfortable with English. So yeah, so that's a little bit about my Indian heritage. So moving on to my research interests, while I was at Washington State, the research I did was on cardiac physiology, and I studied the role of how the cardiac muscle is affected during dilated cardiomyopathy. And this is a picture of the muscle rig where I spent several hours, right, collecting data and finishing my research. Another area of research interest is behavioral approaches to combating obesity. This was something I did while I was at Cornell University as a faculty there for a few years. But my role here in CSU is mainly teaching, and so I want to tell you how I got into this field. So something happened in the last semester when I was a grad TA. And this was what sort of triggered me to think about teaching as a career. So I won this Graduate Teaching Assistant Excellence Award for teaching biochemistry, and it was this award which made me think about maybe I should give teaching a shot, But little did I realize that teaching had been something which was in my blood, because in both my maternal and paternal sides, my grandparents were school teachers. So that was something which was part of my system, but it was this award which led me take this direction. And then I got more training teaching at Cornell. I was initially a teaching postdoc or an instructor for a couple of years, and then I got promoted to be a lecturer, and I spent almost 6 years at Cornell. And I taught a number of courses in nutrition. I taught courses in anatomy, physiology, and also public health as well. And the reason I mentioned this teaching experience is that this experience has helped me to appreciate human health, not only at an individual perspective, which all of us consider, right, but also at a population level as well. So I hope that you know with what sort of background I will be approaching the principles of physiology. So if you ever want to contact me, and I hope most of you want to contact me for questions which are based on the material, the best way to contact me is through my email address here, and my office information is also given here, but it's hard to find me there, so the best way to contact me is to contact me through email. And while we're on the topic of emails, I have found it useful to put this slide in place, right? And this may seem like an overkill, but I realized after teaching at 3 different institutions, some of the emails you get, they really catch your attention for the wrong reasons, right? So I've given you a format of how to write an email to a professor, and I've tried to make like life easy for you. Just copy paste it from this PDF onto your phone and just change a few things, and you can send a proper email, right? Because you don't want to be remembered for the wrong reasons. Out of the 500 plus students in class, you want to be remembered for the right reasons. So a little bit about about the other instructor for the course. Dr. Waldron has taught physiology for many years, and I believe that he's taught for more years than most of us in this class have been alive, right? So you guys are in for a real treat. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he'll be teaching units 2 and 3, and I'll be teaching the majority of the material, right? And keep in mind that both of us have different teaching styles. I use PowerPoint presentations, and he will draw on the whiteboard, and I'll tell you how best you can adjust to each teaching style, right? So I'll talk about that in the upcoming slides. But before we move on, I also want to introduce you to Michelle, our course coordinator. And Michelle will tell you a little bit about herself, but I just want to tell you all how important this role of course coordinator is. You know, she's the glue who holds us together from the background, right? And I know this because while I was at Cornell, I was a course coordinator for multiple courses, and you're trying to be a liaison between the teaching faculty, and here we have 2 teaching faculty in this course, and also a liaison between the students. There are over 500 of you, and also trying to coordinate things between the teaching team. We have both grad TAs and undergrad TAs, so it's a heck of a job, and so I'm very thankful for her, and I hope you also will come to appreciate what she does for the course, right? So over to you, Michelle.
Thank you. Good morning. I know it's technically not morning, but I just always say good morning, so get used to it, I guess. Welcome to physiology. Thank you for coming in on such a nasty day. As he mentioned, I'm the course coordinator, which means I'm probably one of your primary contacts. So you'll hear a lot from me. You'll see me. I'll be usually on the back table. If you ever want to stop and say hi, please do. In addition to me, we have 7 GTAs, many of whom will also be sitting in, like Kristen today. Say hi. And then we have over 40 UTAs. In fact, we have one right here. Well, okay, so there's a lot of people involved in this course, all of whom really love physiology and really love teaching and want to help you. So please come see us, reach out to us in class or through email or tutorials, office hours. We try to make it as easy as possible. All right, a little background on me. I consider myself a CSU baby. I'm a native, not of Colorado, but of CSU. I transferred here for my undergrad, finished my bachelor's in biomedical sciences, and then loved it so much I stuck around and did a master's in the same thing. and then was teaching physiology throughout this entire semester as a UTA, as a GTA, and I didn't want to leave, so I said, why don't you just hire me? So here I am, and I'm going to stay here for a while, I hope, but yay. Okay, so we're going to use Poll Everywhere quite a bit in this course as practice. This is not for points, so don't worry if you can't get in, but this is going to be some of the questions that he talks about in application of material. So just to test out the system, make sure everybody can get on okay. This is the Poll Everywhere. You can also use the QR code or the text if it's easier. And we're just going to play a quick game today of two truths and a lie. So one of these is a lie, and you have to figure out which one. Is my favorite theme park Disney? And I should specify Disney World. So I transferred here from Florida. I've never been to Disneyland, so Disney World. Do I paddleboard with my dog? And do I have my own personal library? Did we reset? Or do we really have that many people?
I just want to see how many we have overall.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow, you guys are good. Okay, I won't hold you up too much. They could play with yours too. Yep, you got it right. That's my lie. My favorite theme park is not Disney. My favorite theme park is actually Universal Studios, specifically Islands of Adventure. And my theory on this is that if you did not go to Disney as a child, it just doesn't mean as much to you. Like, some people love Disney. My husband loves Disney. He wanted to go for a honeymoon there, and I shot that one down. But that's because he went as a kid. I didn't go until I was in my 20s, so I just like Universal better. I do paddleboard with my dog. That's Molly. She's my baby. And she hates the water, but she loves paddleboarding. I can't figure that one out, but I'm glad she's happy. And yes, I have my own personal library. I have a problem. I have entirely too many books and I can't stop. So I actually had to make my basement into a library and build bookcases for it. And my husband has now said that is it. I can't build any more bookcases, so what I can fit on that is all I can get. So I'm getting creative with how I shove them in there. All right. It was very nice to meet you all. Please do come see us, and I will turn you back over to Dr. Michael.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, folks. A little bit about myself now. So the first statement is I went to my favorite restaurant at Washington State over 100 times when I was a student there. B, I had no hobbies when I was in grad school. C, I painted a picture of a horse when I was 3 years old. Okay, wow. So most of you said I had no hobbies when I was in grad school. That's actually the lie. So yes, this is the restaurant where I went 100 times, and on the 100th visit, I got a picture with the restaurant staff, right? And this was a deep dish pizza place called Gambino's, and it was love at first bite, and so I kept going back again and again, and yeah, here we are. And yes, I did have a couple of hobbies when I was in grad school. I had a lot of friends who were international students as well, and I picked up Mandarin and Japanese as hobbies while I was with them, right? And if any of you are into languages, talk to me. I'm happy to tell you what I used to pick up those languages. And yes, I did paint a picture of a horse when I was 3, and here's the proof. And it was no surprise that I wanted to go to art school like my sister, but my parents said you can either become a doctor or become a doctor or an engineer, right? So I ended up getting an engineering degree in biotechnology, and I guess I'm a fake doctor according to my wife because I got my PhD as well. So with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the learning outcomes as you consider this course. So the first learning outcome is to demonstrate an understanding of the cellular function. And notice that I've given you blanks, and the purpose of these blanks are to emphasize what is important to me, and also to make the engagement to be more interactive, with not just having you guys listen to me talk on and on. And because the body is made up of cells, we need to understand how a cell functions before we can understand how the various organ systems work. And I hope you can identify what are the major organ systems in the body. There are around 11 organ systems, and each of these organ systems are made up of organs. For example, the urinary system has the kidneys, the bladder, and it's important to know what are these components, and also to understand how do these components help in the overall functioning of a given organ system. And then I hope you can explain how different organ systems are integrated. And what I mean by integrated is how do these different organ systems work together. For example, if you think about the skeletal system, there are actually some endocrine functions it can perform. And an example of this is the skeletal system can play a role in vitamin D synthesis, right? So the vitamin D, once it is synthesized, it can have an impact on the density of the bones. And would you be surprised if I told you that the reproductive system can have an impact on the skeletal function? And if you, maybe when you go home, you can talk to your family and say, do you guys know about this? And if they ask, how is that possible? You can tell them that after menopause, the estrogen levels drop, and that can have impact on bone density, right? So that's an example of how the organ systems are integrated, right? And this is something I'll try to point out as we go through the semester. And in order to understand how these various organ systems work, I will use a few examples of pathological conditions. And it is my firm conviction that we never really understand how well something works, whether in our body or whether even if it's some device, until it actually stops working, right? So I want to use a few examples of pathology to help you appreciate the function of these various organ systems. And finally, I hope you can demonstrate an ability to integrate the physiology from the cellular and molecular level all the way to the organ system level. So an example of this is we find that there are proteins which anchor the layers of our skin to the matrix below, and if there is mutations in those proteins and there are abnormalities there, then the layers of the skin start peeling off, and this is a condition called epidermolysis bullosa. So we'll talk about that when we discuss the integumentary system. And you will understand that if the skin starts peeling off, we find that the underlying layers are exposed, so that can increase the risk of infection. So the immune system gets involved. There can also be loss of blood, which can lead to dehydration. And so we find that there are just a number of ways in which the different organ systems can be affected by abnormalities at a cellular and molecular level, right? So that is something I hope you can take as well from this course. So we will start the course by talking about what happens at a single cell, and then we'll see how different tissues are formed when similar cells are working together, and how various organs are formed by different tissues coming together. So there are 4 types of tissues which are found in the various organs, and if you were to take a cross section of the stomach, you can find these various types of tissues. And it is multiple organs which come together to make a given organ system. For example, in the digestive system, you have the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestines, large intestines. So there are multiple organs which come together to form a given organ system. And so we find that multiple organ systems will be found in the organism, right? And I want to just point out briefly what are the various organ systems we consider and what is their major function. So that's what I want to point out in this slide. So we'll start our discussion by talking about the integumentary system. This includes the skin, the hair, the nails, and we will see how the various layers of skin will help in the protection of the body from the external environment. And from the integumentary system, we'll move on to the skeletal system. And the skeletal system is mainly going to help with the support of the body and also in movement as well. So without the bones and the cartilage, we'll just be like jellyfish. We won't have any structure to the body. And from the skeletal system, we'll move on to the endocrine system. There are a number of endocrine organs. In this course, we'll only focus on a few of them, like the pituitary gland, the pancreas, and the gonads. So those are the organs we'll focus on. But the goal of the endocrine system is to produce hormones which can be released into the bloodstream, and then what those hormones can bind to different target organs, and that can help with the communication between different parts of the body. Now, working in tandem with the endocrine system is the nervous system, which will help to detect changes in the environment, and then it can help in appropriate responses. For example, if you see something dangerous like a bear. You guys know there was a bear on the Oval a couple of years ago? Were you guys there? Yeah. Okay, there was a black bear on a tree in the Oval. And if you were among the fortunate few to actually see it in person, it's possible that your body would trigger the fight or flight response, and then your muscles can be activated to bring about movement. So we see that the response to the nervous system detecting changes in the environment could be movement. Now, the muscular system can have three types of muscles. Skeletal muscles are those which are connected to the bones, but there are also two other types of muscles which we consider in the cardiovascular system. So the cardiac muscle is found only in the heart, whereas the smooth muscles, they are found lining the various body cavities, and it's also found in the lining the blood vessels as well. And so the cardiovascular system helps in the circulation of the blood. So when you think about the various components of blood, we see there are also these leukocytes or white blood cells which play a role in the immune function, and we will see how these white blood cells will mature through the working of the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system and the immune system, they're quite closely related and working together. And the major component in the blood is the erythrocytes or the red blood cells, and the gas exchange in these red blood cells can take place through the functioning of the respiratory system. And the blood can also carry nutrients, and the nutrient can be carried by the functioning of the digestive system. And as the blood is carrying nutrients and oxygen to the various parts of the body, it can also pick up a number of waste products, and those waste products can be removed through the working of the urinary system, and the fluid balance can be maintained. And finally, we'll talk about the male and female reproductive system. This is the only organ system which is not necessary for the survival of an individual, but it is necessary for the survival of a given species. Alright, so we'll talk about the sexual reproduction in the reproductive system. And in this slide, I also want to point out what are some of the practical applications which we will be discussing, and also examples of pathologies which we will talk about. Examples of pathologies include different types of skin cancer, what causes acne, how to treat that, and different types of injuries like burns or frostbite, which is quite relevant to all of us since the last couple of days because of the sub-zero temperatures. We'll talk about how the skin will wrinkle with aging, what causes warts, and also this condition, epidermolysis bullosa. Practical applications also, like application of tattoos or liposuction, you'll be able to appreciate how it happens and what are some of the risks associated with liposuction because of our discussion on the integumentary system. In the skeletal system, we'll talk about osteoporosis, a condition which mainly affects the elderly, where there is decreased bone density. And I'll also point out how lifestyle alterations like diet and exercise can actually help to maintain bone density. In the endocrine system, we really won't talk about any types of pathologies in this semester. But in the nervous system, I will talk about the Brown-Séquard syndrome. It's a condition when there's a partial damage to one side of the spinal cord. Depending on which side is damaged, on the opposite side, there are some sensations which can be detected, but on the same side, other sensations cannot be detected, right? So we'll talk about the Brown-Séquard syndrome to better appreciate how the signals from different sides of the body are being processed, carried to the brain and processed as well. In terms of the cardiovascular system, we'll talk about the difference between heart attack and cardiac arrest. And also in the immune system, we'll see how different kinds of pathogens can be affected. Like if there is viral infection, how does the body respond, versus when there is a bacterial infection, how does the immune system respond. As far as the respiratory system is concerned, we'll talk about pneumothorax, a condition when there is a puncture wound in the lungs, and also the respiratory distress syndrome, a condition which affects premature babies. And in the urinary system, I'd like to talk about how the urine can be used as a diagnostic tool to detect various abnormalities in the body. And we'll also briefly touch upon the urinary tract infection and how there is an increased risk in females compared to males. And in the digestive system, we'll talk about a number of pathologies like tooth decay, acid reflux, diarrhea, constipation, things which are common to most of us. We'll be talking about such conditions in the digestive system. And finally, in the reproductive system, I'd like to point out a couple of conditions, Klinefelter and Turner syndrome, which is linked to abnormal number of chromosomes, right? So chromosomal abnormality leads to these conditions. And as far as application is concerned, I'll talk about contraceptives and how the birthing process takes place as well, right? So those are some things some applications we'll consider. So do you guys remember what was the second blank on the learning objectives page? There were two blanks. Cellular was the first blank. What was the second blank? Integration. Yes, thank you. All right. I can lip read, that's good. So integration, how do the various organ systems work together? And what I hope to do in this next slide is just give you an example of how all the organ systems are working together, right? And there are infinite ways in which we can discuss this, but this is just one example of how the various systems work together. And if you could repeat what I'm saying in this slide by the end of the semester, when you go for some interview, you'll really impress whoever is interviewing you, right? That you really have a firm understanding of what's happening in the human body. So we will wrap up the semester by talking about how fertilization takes place. How does a sperm fertilize an egg to make a single cell which can become a new human being? And we are going to, that's how we'll finish the semester, but we're going to start the semester by looking at the structure of a single cell. Now the main component of a cell is water, and that leads us to talking about the properties of water, and also we'll talk about hydrophobic and hydrophilic interactions. So whenever a molecule has got both hydrophobic and hydrophilic properties, it's said to be amphipathic, and the cell membrane is made up of these phospholipids which are amphipathic, and that can really guard what can enter or leave a given cell. And so the passage of molecules in and out of these cells is through transmembrane proteins. And so the question is, where do these proteins come from? And to better understand that, we will talk about how protein synthesis takes place and the role of the various organelles in the cell, including the nucleus. And we will do a refresher on the central dogma to see how the DNA gives rise to the RNA, how the RNA gives rise to proteins. And there are several types of proteins in the body, right? And the first type of proteins we'll consider are those proteins which join cells together, right? So the structures holding cells together are called cell junctions, and there are different types of cell junctions depending on what proteins are constituting them. So there are cell junctions which form a seal between cells. There are other cell junctions which form channels between cells. Others just offer mechanical support. So once we see how the cells are held together, we'll move on to talk about what are the various types of tissues, because I told you that similar cells come together to form tissues, and there are 4 types of tissues. So we'll talk about nervous tissue, muscular tissue, epithelial and connective tissue, and we'll see how these tissues show up in pretty much every organ system that we discuss. And we'll also briefly talk about metabolism to see how the body makes ATP, because protein synthesis is expensive, and pretty much every function which takes place in the cell is going to require ATP. And so we'll see that ATP can be made from carbohydrates, proteins and fats, all of which are ingested through the function of a digestive system. And in order for the digestive system to function, the nervous system has to be involved, because the brain has to send a signal to open your mouth, to chew the food, to swallow the food. And all of this takes place during the rest and digest action by the brain, right? It's not during the fight or flight response, it's during the rest and digest activity. And we find that even the endocrine system plays a role in the digestive function. An example of this is how the pancreas can detect the blood glucose levels, and it either releases insulin or glucagon depending on whether there needs to be a reduction or increase in blood glucose levels respectively. We'll also find that the adrenal glands, the glands sitting on top of the kidneys, can also play a role in digestive function. And we'll, as far as the endocrine system is concerned, this semester we'll mainly focus on how the hypothalamus can act on the pituitary gland at the base of the brain, and how that can affect a number of organs. And the organs which are affected include the thyroid gland and also the gonads as well. The testes and ovaries can also be influenced by hormones which are released by the pituitary gland. And I already mentioned that the reproductive system is tied to the function of the skeletal system, because during menopause there can be a decrease in bone density. So the way we improve bone density is by engaging in physical activity, weight bearing exercises, which involves the use of the skeletal muscles. So in order for the skeletal muscles to function, and whenever you're engaging in physical activity which requires a lot of exertion, it's happening under the regulation of the fight or flight response. So you see how all of the systems we discuss right here, they're going to be controlled somehow by the nervous system. So this is showing you how things are integrated. So in order for the muscles to function, there should be an increase in blood flow to the large muscles, and this is possible through the cardiovascular system, which pumps the blood, and the blood vessels which carry the various substances to the muscles. Now what is going to be carried to the muscles include nutrients, right, such as carbohydrates and fats, through the functioning of the digestive system. In addition to blood, we also see that oxygen can be brought to the muscles and carbon dioxide is taken away, and the gas exchange happens through the functioning of the respiratory system. And any of the waste products which are produced by the muscles, it will be carried by the blood and purified by the urinary system. And we find that the blood also contains white blood cells, which are playing a role in the immune function, along with the integumentary system, which also plays a role in protection of the body as well. So this is how, according to me, I see how all the various organ systems are integrated, right? There are infinite ways in which you can talk about this, but this is just one way for you to consider. And we will come back to this slide before I start any new unit, so that you know where we are in the grand scheme of things. So this may seem like a lot, but I don't want to throw you to the wolves without giving you sufficient training, right? So let me give you a few study tips. So how many of you knew this before? A STEM class is going to take around 3 to 4 hours outside the class for you to succeed. How many of you knew this before? All right, great. I see a lot of hands. That's fantastic. All right. So this is going to be around 12 to 16 hours per week, right, outside class. And so you really need to determine now when you're going to spend that time every week. All right. And there's a saying which I tell myself many times: if I fail to plan, I'm planning to fail, right? So now is the time to actually come up with a plan on how you want to use this time, right? So let me give you a few tips on how best to spend your time, and I will divide this up into 3 parts, right? What do you do before you come to class, what do you do during class, and what do you do after class, right? So I think these 3 times are very important. So I think before and after you come to class, I would devote like 40 minutes in total. So the first 20 minutes before you come to class, review the slides, right? So all the slides are uploaded. Please download them and just go through the slides. And this is what you should do for the sections as I teach. Dr. Walden will be teaching on the whiteboard. So for whatever he's teaching, I would request that you read the ebook, right? So the ebook he wrote, and it ties in very closely with what he teaches. For what I teach, just look at my slides. And when you go through the slides, there will be a set of questions at the end of each lecture. Try to identify what are the answers to those questions, right? The answers to all those questions will be in the slides. So just say that, okay, question number 1, I think the answer is on slide number 4, right? Question number 3, the answer is on slide maybe 7 and 2. Right, so just make a quick note of that, and we will actually talk about those answers in class. But the more you are prepared outside class, the less you have to put effort in class. Thirdly, if you identify any words for which you don't know the meaning, if someone were to ask you, hey, what does this word mean? And you're like, I have no idea. Write down what that meaning is. Just do a quick Google search. You all have, most of us have phones, right? Just do a quick search for what those words mean and write down the definition. So if you do this during lecture, you will be able to listen with anticipation because you already know what I'll be talking about, right? And when you listen with anticipation, there will definitely be understanding, right? And when you understand what I'm saying, then please write things down, right? If you don't understand what I'm saying, writing things down will just be a waste of time. Just, I would say, spend time listening to understand. And there are a few blanks in the slides, so fill those out, but mostly I hope you're just paying attention and listening. So after class, spend another 20 minutes to make sure that any of the questions which you were not able to find answers for before class, you're able to finalize those answers, because I will be pointing out what they are, right? Complete the key questions, and also if there are any topics where you need more clarification, I would request you to identify that as well after class. And then I would highly recommend that you guys attend office hours, right? And the reason I suggest this is we have, I believe, over 40 undergrad TAs who have sat in these same chairs before you guys, and they've done well, right? And not all of them have got A's, right? Some of them have taken the course multiple times, and so I hope having a very diverse set of students on our undergraduate teaching team will help you guys to know that they are very relatable, right? It's not that they know everything, but they are here to help you guys. And one way in which you can take help from the teaching team is that if you click on the study tools in the home page, there are these resources on how to study and what are the extra resources you can use. And I think just going through this by yourself may seem overwhelming because there are just so many options, right? So I think talking to a teaching team member will help you to know what will best suit you. And we will update the the bios of the various TAs, and there's even a testimonial from one TA of how she didn't do well in the course and then started turning things around. And I hope to upload more such testimonial videos for you guys to watch and be inspired. So the TAs will help in tutorial sessions. To attend tutorials, just click on this link right here and you can see what is the various schedules, and attending these tutorials can give you extra credit points, as I will point out in a few minutes. And I also feel that in terms of recommendation letters at the end of the semester, even if you get an A in this course, all I can say is so and so was in my class and they got an A, right? Because I don't have an opportunity to interact with you guys on a one-to-one basis, I will take the feedback from the TAs to say that so-and-so came to the office hours and this is my interaction with them on a one-to-one basis. So that's how the letters will be formatted. So whatever the reason is, I would suggest you guys start building a relationship with your TAs from the beginning of the semester. Okay, so now let's talk about the various types of assessments. So there will be 4 unit exams, and the final exam is going to be cumulative, right? And we cannot drop the final because we want you to have an overall integrated knowledge, right? So the lowest of the first 4 unit exams can be dropped. The final cannot be dropped. And I'll tell you what is RPAs and pre-course survey in the upcoming slides, but notice that you can score 10% of your overall points from the RPAs and 2% of your overall grade from an activity which is due by Friday of this week. So in the exam, we'll ask you questions which are at the lower level of Bloom's taxonomy, and the lower level is just being able to memorize and regurgitate, right? And I was at this level when I first came to grad school, because back in India all I knew was how to memorize and regurgitate. But then in grad school I had to learn how to think critically, and it was a very steep learning curve. And so I can empathize with all of you, right? I didn't come to grad school with that knowledge, but I hope to train you guys to think critically. And the way we will train you at these multiple levels is that the key questions at the end of each lecture, they will be focused on just understanding and remembering the content, whereas the poll everywhere questions in class and the RPA questions which we require you to do, those will focus more on critical thinking skills. So the 4 exams, they will have this various topics in it. Notice that in Unit 1 there are a number of topics because we hope a lot of this information is just review for most of you. Unit 2 will be endocrine and nervous system, and trust me folks, the exams only get harder because they're going to integrate concepts from the first units in the upcoming units, right? Unit 3 is muscular system, cardiovascular, blood, lymphatic and immune system, and Unit 4 is respiratory, digestive and urinary system. And the final exam will have questions on the reproductive system, and it will be cumulative as well, right? And so the lowest unit exam is dropped and the final is mandatory. And so the way points have been distributed in each of these exams I've shown you here. So each exam is worth 100 points. There will be multiple choice and fill in the blank questions. The final is only multiple choice questions, and it's got a higher weightage, right? So I feel that even if people don't do well at the beginning of the semester and they're trying to figure out how to study, the final has around 28% of the overall grade. So finishing strong is what the goal is, right? And also consistency. You may have done very well in the first 4 exams, and if you don't finish strong, the final can really hurt the overall grade as well. So the pre-course survey, just you can click on this link on your homepage, and you can answer the 20 questions. And the purpose of this is to be as a diagnostic tool for both you and us to know what is your grasp on the prerequisite material, right? And if you don't do well, don't be too worried. Just know that you should act on it, right? So we'll give you the full 10 points for just completing it, but based on your performance, you can reach out to us and we can come up with study strategies before it is too late, right? So the purpose of this is to just give you feedback on where your current understanding is and how we can help you better. So RPAs is referring to the repeated practice activities, and we have actually collected data on students who engage in these activities. So they are just a set of previous exam questions, and as you take this quiz, you will just get points for participating in it, and you'll also get explanation for why a given response is correct or incorrect, right? So we want you to practice multiple times with this RP activities. And if you were to click on this link, it'll open up to this page, and you can give your consent for us to use your data in our research. But even if you choose not to, you can still participate in this. But just the various steps are listed here. And notice that each RPA will open up after the relevant material is completed. So notice that RPA 1 will open up only on the 29th, RPA 2 will open up on the 5th. And so to make the most of this opportunity, you want to go back to a given RPA activity. And because these questions are coming from a question bank, each time you take the RPA, there will be new questions showing up. So the more times you take it, and the more times you mix up the RPAs, you can have an effective behavior which can give you maximum points. If there are any questions, please contact Dr. Thomas Rausch, right, because he's the one in charge of this project. And this is an example of how you can score all 50 points. If you do more than 3 times the RPAs on different days, and you go back to a given RPA activity, you will have a highly effective behavior and you can score 50 points. But we also want to be careful that you're not just guessing the responses. And we have found that students who participate in the RPAs the way they're supposed to, like they do RPA 1 on one day, 2 the next day, 3 the next day, and then they come back to 1 again and to go do 2, 3, 4, they have effective behavior. And those who do this effective behavior, they increase their overall performance by 11%. So imagine 70 versus 81%, right? That's a huge increase in performance. And all lectures will be recorded. So on Echo 360, you can watch my lectures live. Dr. Walden's lectures will be live on YouTube. But after 24 hours or so, we will upload all lectures to YouTube, because we do hope that you're able to watch and clarify things if you missed something during the given lecture. And there will also be a GroupMe group where you can communicate with each other and also with the teaching team. And we will have members of the teaching team on the GroupMe, so please be respectful. If you don't be negative, it doesn't help anybody. If you have any complaints, come and talk to us directly, and don't use profanity. We will be removed. There is an optional textbook if you need to use it, but whatever you need for this course, it should be available on my slides. You don't need to buy this book. The ebook is beneficial because it ties very closely with what Dr. Walden will be teaching, and if you access the ebook, you can also do the pre-lecture quizzes, which can give you up to 10 points. So this is all extra credit, right? That is 2% of your overall grade. And if you take part in the tutorials, like attending either the online or the in-person sessions and meeting with the TAs, you can score 1 point per week, and you can score up to 10 points. So that is an overall of 4% grade improvement, right? That's all extra credit. And finally, there is the BMS 200 recitation section. So this is run by Michelle, our course coordinator, and this is an optional 1 credit class, and it's been found that those who participate in this seem to do well overall in BMS 300, right? And so these are the various sections where you can enroll in, and this will be run by grad TAs, and so this can give you extra opportunities to practice the material as well. So with that, I just want to say, please register through RamWeb, and this is graded separately compared to BMS 300. So with that, thank you all for your time, and I will see you tomorrow in class.